All right, well, if you've been with us on Wednesday night, we're studying through the book of Esther. Just kind of a quick little recap of our story up to this point. King Ahasuerus, or you might better know him as Xerxes, has deposed Queen Vashti because he threw a banquet and she refused to show up to that. So she has been deposed, and the search is on for a new queen. And lo and behold, a young Jewish girl named Hadassah, who has changed her name probably to fit in more with with the society in which she's living, and is better known as Esther. Esther wins the contest, and Esther becomes the new queen. And that's pretty much where we left off last time. Now, tonight we're going to get some verses that are going to not focus on Esther as much, but we're going to get to look at two new characters. Mordecai, which is Esther's cousin, who basically raised Esther like a father because Esther was orphaned. And so we get a better, closer look at Mordecai tonight, who was only briefly introduced earlier. And we get introduced to a brand new character named Haman tonight. Now, you'll want to pay attention to Haman and remember his name, because he is going to play the foil. Is that the right word I'm looking for? That's not a foil. Okay, he's going to play the adversary. He's going to be the bad guy, the villain. You know. So if Esther were a melodrama, he would be the one that whenever he came on the stage, you would boo and hiss and throw popcorn at him. If that makes sense. All right. So we left off in verse 21 of chapter 2 last time. So let's pick up right there. In those days, while Mordecai sat within the king's gate, two of the king's eunuchs, Bigthan and Teresh, doorkeepers, became furious and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. So the matter became known to Mordecai, who told Queen Esther, and Esther informed the king in Mordecai's name. When an inquiry was made into the matter, it was confirmed, and both were hanged on a gallows. And it was written in the book of the Chronicles in the presence of the king. Okay, so we had only briefly been introduced to Mordecai. Now we get Mordecai appearing again. He's sitting in the king's gate. Now, who's Mordecai and what's he doing in the king's gate? Yeah, I mean, he certainly wants to keep an eye on Esther. How did he get at the king's gate? They generally didn't let just any old body hang out at the gate. So most scholars think that he was probably a gatekeeper. So he kind of had a sort of a position there. Now, Mordecai is going to be the good guy in the story of Esther. So Mordecai is, if this were a melodrama, which Esther is not really a melodrama, but if it were a melodrama, and Haman was the guy that you booed and hissed and threw popcorn at every time he walked on stage, Mordecai is the one that you're going to cheer and you know, cheer and clap and when he comes up, because he's the good guy in the deal. And so what do we see about Mordecai that demonstrates his character here? Yeah, he stops the assassination. Do you think that it was easy or safe thing to do to go to the king and say, hey, you're, actually he goes to the queen, Esther, his cousin, and he says, hey, these guys here that I work with, they're trying They're trying to kill, there's a plot to kill the king. Was that easy? Was that safe? None of the above, probably. It put Esther in danger. It probably put him in danger because what if the king doesn't believe what Esther's saying? Now, now Esther's in danger. Now Mordecai, where the story originates, is in danger. But he does it. Now, what does it take to do something dangerous, even though you're afraid, but you do it anyway because it's the right thing to do? What does it require to do that? Courage, which comes as a result of what? Faith. So we see faith, we see courage, we see honor, all of those traits that we value in people, we see coming out in this character, Mordecai. It was a dangerous mission, and he puts Esther in a dangerous position as well, because if she's not believed, if she's, for whatever reason, the king doesn't side with her or believe her, then it could be dangerous for her and Mordecai. Now, and this is going to, this is setting up something that's going to happen later in the book, but Mordecai he's the one who makes the king aware of the plot through Esther. And it's recorded in the books of Mordecai's deed, but he gets no recognition for it. I mean, he doesn't get any medals of honor. He doesn't get any attaboys or pat on your backs. No gift certificate to Chili's. No nothing. I mean, he's just kind of forgotten all about. And now there's some irony in that. Why is it ironic that Mordecai isn't recognized for his good deed at this time? What? He will be later. So it's setting up an event that's going to happen later on. That's going to really, be the culmination of the book of Esther, and it's setting up another story of this other character that we're about to read in just the next set of verses, of this character Haman, who is recognized for doing nothing. Literally. I mean, he's just promoted. So you've got Mordecai, who we've already said he's a man of faith, he's a man of courage, he's a man of honor. He's the kind of guy that you want on your side. He's the kind of guy you want in your corner. And he does a good deed, and he doesn't get recognized. You've got Haman, who does nothing, and he is really a reprehensible sort of person. He demonstrates none of those things. Instead, he demonstrates things like pride, vengeance, hatred, all of those things that we loathe in a person. And he gets promoted for doing nothing. Now, this little irony, it speaks about Mordecai, it speaks about Haman, but most of all, it speaks about who? The king, right? Yeah. So here is King Xerxes. I've got one guy who literally saved my life. He's a good guy. He's courageous. He's honorable. He does the right thing. He cares about people. I don't do anything to honor him. I've got another guy who's just a little wormy dude that basically, that just basically is a cancer in your kingdom, and you promote him for no reason. So, there's some irony there. But Mordecai will be recognized in God's time. The king may not recognize him, but in God's time, he will be recognized. And it sets up this clash between pride and humility. The pride of Haman and the humility of Mordecai. And that's basically going to drive the plot of the story from here. It reminds me a lot of the story of Joseph, who does all these good deeds, and every time, he's never remembered, and he gives the interpretation of these dreams, and he says, when you get, to the cupbearer, he says, when you get restored to your position, remember me. I mean, it's cold in this here dungeon. Help me. But he's forgotten all about until one day Pharaoh has a dream, and the guy says, it seems like I remember back when I was in the dungeon that I had a dream, and this guy interpreted it. And so in God's time, Joseph gets exalted. In God's time, Mordecai will as well. Questions on those verses? Yes, ma'am.
Could it be that Esther did not tell Xerxes that Mordecai had a message to protect him? So he didn't know?
So in verse 22, the matter became known to Mordecai, who told Queen Esther, and Esther informed the king in Mordecai's name. So yeah, she gave him the name. He was more interested in his banquets and world's fairs that he was putting on than his 300 BC Persian version of the Bachelor to worry about actually rewarding people in his kingdom that should be honored. So, all right, let's look on then to chapter 3, verse 1. Yes, sir. This is a separate deal, yeah. This is chapter 3 kind of begins a separate thought here. After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite. Now that's an interesting, let's just pause there. Let's park there for just a second. Who were the Agagites? Yeah, they were descendants of Agag. So who is Agag? Right. That's right. So he was supposed to be, the Amalekites were supposed to have been wiped out. King Agag is spared because the people of Israel didn't do what God told them to do. And now a descendant is going to cause problems for the Jews. So, in other words, because Israel didn't do what God told them to do and wipe out this pagan people, now this remnant of the pagan people is going to make an attempt to wipe out the Jews. Now, God's not going to let that happen, but I think there's a lesson there that when God tells you something, do it, and do it to its fullest. All right. After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes who were with him, and all the king's servants who were within the king's gates bowed and paid homage to Haman, for so the king had commanded concerning him. But Mordecai would not bow or pay homage. Then the king's servants who were within the king's gate said to Mordecai, "Why do you transgress the king's command?" Now it happened when they spoke to him daily and he would not listen to them, that they told it to Haman to see whether Mordecai's words would stand, for Mordecai had told them that he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow or pay him homage, Haman was filled with wrath. But he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had told him of the people of Mordecai. Instead, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews who were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, the people of Mordecai. So here's what kind of guy Haman is. He's got a beef with Mordecai, but he's not going to be satisfied just getting rid of Mordecai. He's going to get rid of everybody that's of the people that Mordecai came from, the Jews. So the whole thing stems from the fact that Mordecai will not pay homage. He will not bow down to Haman. Why? Why not? It's against God's law, somebody said. That's right. So he's a Jew, and he has religious convictions that I'm not going to bow down to this person who's not my Lord or my King. So he chooses to what's the conscientious objector. He's not going to do it. So now Haman, when he finds this out, he's ready to kill not only Mordecai, he's ready to kill all of Mordecai's people, the Jews. What would you say about, how would you compare these two men, Mordecai and Haman? Complete opposite in what way? So let's start with Mordecai. Religiously, they're vastly different. Character-wise, they're very different. What? Nationality, yeah, they are that. So here's this sets up this classic struggle of pride and humility. Haman representing pride, Mordecai representing humility. Haman representing evil deeds, Mordecai representing good deeds. And so it's setting up this classic tale of good versus evil. I mean, it's the kind of story that everybody loves. There's a hero, there's a villain, it's good versus evil. There's a clear hero, there's a clear villain. So it's the kind of story that everybody's going to love, and it has a happy ending, and it is the kind of story that teaches a moral at the end of it. So now, explain the relationship of faith and obedience as it applies to Mordecai. Right. So he obeys God even when it's difficult. And the obedience stems from faith. So belief in God leads to courage and conviction. So my conviction about God, who God is, and who He is to me, stems from my faith, which brings forth things like courage and honor and duty and all of those things. There's a very fine line, my friends, between courage and stupidity. Very fine. You know what makes the difference between courage and stupidity? Faith. Faith makes the difference. Just because a man goes out and risks his life, that doesn't make him courageous. You know, I could go and jump off a 100-foot cliff into a puddle of water. That didn't take bravery to do that. That took stupidity to do that. But if I do something risking my life because it's the right thing to do, and I believe it's what God wants me to do, that carries it to a different level. Now it's not stupidity. Now it's courage that stems from faith. So, questions on those verses? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yes, yes, yeah. And, it seems as though his hatred for Mordecai grows off of this idea that he was a Jew. In other words, it wasn't just that he hated Mordecai, like he hated the Jewish people. Maybe he hated the Jewish people because they had wiped out his ancestors. I mean, I'm speculating a bit at this point, but there certainly seems to be this idea that it's not personal between Haman and Mordecai. It's corporate between Haman and all of the Jews. And you're right, it has been growing, boiling. All right, let's look on to verse 7. In the first month, which is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is the lot, before Haman to determine the day of the month until it fell on the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. Now, what are they casting a lot for? What are they trying to determine? Yeah, when to kill the Jews. That's the idea. Verse 8, Haman said to the king Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from all other peoples, and they do not keep the king's laws. Therefore, it is not fitting for the king to let them remain. In other words, wipe the whole race out. If it pleases the king, let a decree be written that they be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who do the work to bring into the king's treasuries. So the king took the signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, and the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. And the king said to Haman, the money and the people are given to you to do with them as seems good to you. I thought this was a little strange. Haman says, I'll pay 10,000 talents to have this done. And the king says, I'll pay the money. I mean, as I read it, unless I'm misreading that there, it seems like the king says the money and the people are given to you to do with them as seems good to you. And in 9, it says, if it pleases the king, let a decree be written that they be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who do the work. So it sounds to me like the king is footing the bill for it. Then the king's scribes were called on the 13th day of the first month, and a decree was written according to all that Haman commanded, to the king's satraps, to the governors who were over each province, to the officials of all the people, to every province according to its script, and to every people in their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus it was written and sealed with the king's signet ring. And the letters were sent by the couriers into all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate. We're going to make sure we get them all. Destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, and to plunder their possessions. A copy of the document was to be issued as law in every province, being published for all people, that they should be ready for that day. The couriers went out, hastened by the king's command, and the decree was proclaimed in Shushan, the citadel. So the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Shushan was perplexed. Okay, so here's the decree that Haman gets the king to sign into law. On certain day, we're going to kill, destroy, and annihilate. I thought those were all the same things, but we're going to make sure we got it covered. All the Jews. Now, there is a Jewish festival that still exists today to commemorate this event and God's deliverance of the Jews from it. It's known as Purim, and they get that name from what? Pur. They cast the pur, or they cast the lot. So Purim is this holiday, this festival day that commemorates God's deliverance from Haman's evil plan to destroy the Jews. Now, Haman implies that he has the king's best interest at heart. He says, oh, king, there are these that can't be trusted. There are these who, in your kingdom, they're different from all other people. They don't keep the king's laws. They're not fitting for the king to let them live. I'm just telling this, king, for your own good. Do you think that Haman really has the king's best interest at heart? Nah, probably not. Whose best interest at heart does Haman have? Haman has Haman's interest at heart. Don't think for a minute that he didn't. he's interested in revenge and arrogance. That's what's two things really are driving Haman at this point: revenge and arrogance, which are two very ugly traits and deadly traits. Now, as I read this story, I mean, the one that we don't talk a lot about is the king at this point. And to me, I see glaring character flaws appearing in the king here. What are some character flaws that you see in King Ahasuerus at this time? Yeah, I mean, just, yeah. What? Yeah, no, no trial, no confirmation, no anything, no, you know, to me it seems like he doesn't have a good grasp of what's going on in his kingdom. I mean, here's this man that you've promoted really for no reason at all. You just elevate him. Maybe he's your buddy, I don't know, but for whatever reason you elevate him. And here's another man who has literally saved your life, and you've done nothing to acknowledge that. And so here's a king that rewards evil and punishes and leaves the righteous unrewarded, and he's going to allow a whole race of people in his kingdom to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. And it just doesn't seem like he's got a good grasp of what's going on in his kingdom. And like Haman, what is one of the primary things that's driving King Ahasuerus, do you think? Pride. Pride is something that kings are very susceptible to, but it's a very ugly trait. Really, anytime that you're in leadership, you're susceptible to pride. And it is a very ugly thing. And the higher up you, what is the saying? Power corrupts and absolute power absolutely corrupts, or something like that. Like the higher the higher your leadership goes, the greater the temptation, and the greater the uglier it can get. And so when you're over the largest, most powerful empire in the world at the time, it can be a very ugly thing. Questions on chapter 3? I give you a couple little. Yes, ma'am. Haman is honored. No, Esther is Haman was honored, and that's the scripture reference. No, it's the book of Esther, chapter 3, 1 through 6 is where Haman is honored. Yeah, no, Haman never honors Esther. Yeah, no. Yeah, this whole thing, we're going to destroy a whole race of people because one man refused to bow down. Yeah, I think that Haman hated the Jewish people going back, centuries, for the fact that, they wiped out his people. And so, yeah, there's an axe to grind there, I think. Yeah. Right. Yep. Satan certainly, neither God nor Satan is mentioned in the book of Esther, and yet both are it's very obvious that both are at work in this story. All right, I gave you a couple little application questions here. What does the story of Mordecai teach us about compromise in our world today? You'll pay a price if you don't compromise, and you'll pay a price if you do, right? Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's never easy to do what's right, but it's never right to do what's wrong. So, another compromise. Yeah. Yep. Right. So how do you see God at work in this situation? Yeah, he's protecting people. He's setting the pieces in place to provide this great deliverance. We've already seen him get Esther in place. We see Mordecai set it. We see Haman being set. Now, we look and see and say, well, Haman's not following God. No, he's not. But God is using even hard-hearted Haman and putting him in a situation where the tables are going to be turned. And literally, the gallows that he builds for Mordecai, he will be swinging on himself. But I get ahead of the story just a little bit. Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! Yeah. Sorry, spoiler alert. Yeah, it really kind of is really kind of neat to see how God sort of maneuvers the pieces in place to bring about his will. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Absolutely. So how does the conflict between Haman and Mordecai, how does it illustrate the classic struggle between good and evil? Well, as we said, Haman, driven by pride, and basically his undoing becomes that he desires worship that's not his to possess. Who does that sound like? Sounds a whole lot like Satan to me. Driven by pride and desiring worship that's not his, right? So Haman sort of mirrors Satan in this story. Now, Mordecai is going to sort of play the Christ figure in this story. Now, hear what I'm saying. I did not say Mordecai is Christ. That's not what I said. But he's playing the role of a Christ figure in this. He's driven by humility. And this humility is what leads to obedience and ultimately to sacrifice on his part. Now, who does that sound like? Sounds a whole lot like Jesus, doesn't it? So we've got two ends of the spectrum: evil Haman and righteous Mordecai, and they're going to play out in a localized sense this cosmic struggle from ages past of good versus evil, and we're going to get to see it play itself out in the book of Esther. So the temptation for Haman is that his pride is what leads to ambition, which causes hate, which ends up in murder. For Mordecai, it's his faith that results in love, which brings about his submission and his obedience. So two very different characters playing two very different roles, and God is in chapter 3 maneuvering the pieces to get them in place to bring about the deliverance. So at the end of the day, it won't necessarily be Mordecai or Esther who is the hero of the story. The true hero of the story will be God. Right. All right. And that wraps up chapter 3. Questions, comments? All right, I have a little brief video. Now, as I said, because ancient Persia in the capital of Susa, where all of this takes place, is in modern-day Iran. And our State Department frowns on me taking you on a field trip to Iran. Then I'm attempting on Wednesday nights to bring a little bit of Iran to you. You might not want me to bring Iran to you. Leave it over there. So I've given you usually a 2 or 3 minute little video about something in or around the area where this was taking place. So tonight, this is a video from Susa, modern-day Iran, and the capital, what would have been Esther's capital of Susa. Now, it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with this story of Esther, but it's the tomb of the prophet Daniel, which I found interesting, and I thought, well, if we were to take a field trip over there, and since we're taking a virtual field trip to Iran, this is one of the stops we certainly would have made. So it will have to do when you study Daniel. Is it the actual tomb of Daniel? I don't know. Tradition says it is. Who knows if it really is? But it looks like a discotheque, kind of. It's really kind of weird. So take a look. Let's travel to Iran in the safety of our chair tonight and see what we can learn.
Okay, this is the tomb of Daniel in Susa. We'll go inside.
So, look at the chadors and the banners that is from Imam Ali.
Tomb of Daniel. Of course, it's not really Daniel, but that's okay. Okay, we're in the tomb of Daniel. There's the women's section is on the other side. We have the mirrored style, similar to the Qajars. And the floor looks like an agate marble. Side.
All right, so Don't know that you'll ever make it to Iran to go to Daniel's tomb, but if you do, bring your sunglasses because it looks to be very blinding to me. So I thought it was interesting. Daniel is revered as a prophet not only by Jews but also by Muslims. And there is a small contingency of Jews in Iran, believe it or not. I found that it's fascinating, but there is. And so they both revere this site as a sacred site. Is it really Daniel? I don't know, but anyway, kind of interesting. All right, well, we're going to close in a word of prayer, and then we will see you Sunday. All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for